For those who competed decades ago, speeding down highways, through towns, country roads. For those who sat watching on the sides of the street, who found solace in chaos and thunderous speed. Even for those who grew up without the sights and the sounds, and live without race cars shaking the ground. Who don't understand why racing appeals to our fascination, wonder, and the way that we feel. A purpose-built place to camp and spend time with friends, watching racing together until darkness descends. Though no longer do the streets rumble and roar, there's a place just for this, a park to explore.
A road racing circuit before the assault. The 4 twisting, beautiful miles at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. For 6 brutal, ear-shattering hours, its serenity will be violated by the raw power of screaming racing machines. It's the famed end-of-season endurance classic, the Road America 500. The specially constructed race circuit at Elkhart Lake at normal speed is a scenic 4-mile drive through fall-tinted Wisconsin countryside.
Hidden by forests near Elkhart Lake, not a path nor a trail, but a road meant to race. In a town too quiet, the refuge we seek, Road America, the racetrack, the National Park of Speed.
Nearly everyone dreams of being a race car driver. Most people never get to live that dream. They're stuck on the other side of the fence. For the longest time, that's all we could do. But now, in a new era of sim racing, a new venue for racing competition, that dream can be realized. You can earn the opportunity to drive a race car if you can prove you're the best. This is the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, a 5-month-long, multi-round esports championship using the iRacing.com simulator. Drivers from all over the country and a few from all over the world will battle tooth and nail in this online racing series. It all begins tonight at one of the great American racetracks. We're at Road America, known as the National Park of Speed. Welcome to Winding Road. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by IMSA driver Tom O'Gorman for the first round of many in the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. 2 20-minute sprint races back-to-back, part of a long multi-round championship that will let one driver live out their dream of driving a real race car in the real world. That all begins in iRacing tonight.
You can't match that kind of offer. It's absolutely true what you say. It's a lot of us just dream to be able to do this. I know I was one of those drivers. Never thought I would be able to make it, and it's so awesome to see this opportunity offered with a bunch of cool partners behind the scenes making it happen, and we're here to give somebody the opportunity of a lifetime.
Absolutely, and thanks again to our sponsors that have come on board to allow us to do this season. Once again, the 3rd consecutive year that we've allowed $5,000 worth of prizing to go out. Again, the ultimate champion will get to drive a SPEC MX-5 Challenge race car in a test session, or if they're race licensed, they can actually race that car. And big thanks to Level Up Racing School, which will provide the prizes at the tail end of the season, along with Winding Road Racing, Penguin RC Simulation, and Sportscar Driving Association. Founded in 1995, the Sportscar Driving Association provides the driving enthusiasts the opportunity to experience high-performance driving in a safe and controlled environment. SCDA events are non-competitive and driver educational with focus on safety and fun. SCDA welcomes everyone from novices with no track experience as well as seasoned track drivers and racers. We invite you to explore the www.scda1.com website to learn more about them and their events at some of the best racetracks in the East Coast. The Midwestern track for tonight, Tom, the 4-mile Road America, the National Park of Speed, qualifying underway for our first round. Cars pulling on the racetrack. They get 15 minutes to lay down a flyer and prove that they're the fastest and can start on the front row.
And I'd argue that with this specific kind of racing, Road America might be the biggest challenge on the entire schedule. It takes a specific kind of racecraft and a specific kind of savvy to really control a field when you're racing a field of spec cars at Road America, especially slow drafting spec race cars at Road America. So I think the cream will rise to the top really early on, and tonight will be a really good read on who are the drivers to watch throughout this entire 9-round season.
There's a bunch of drivers to watch, and we should name a couple of them. Drivers like Nathan Saxon in this number 16 car, he's returning for this season. Riley Thompson in the number 58 came in late last season, got a whole bunch of top 10s, proved that he could run up at the front. Brian Sohn is back with us again this season. Kevin Zhu, Carter Kundinger is joining us. We've seen him in league races all over the internet. He's going to join us here. He could be a champion at the season's end. He's awful good. Murphy Nichols is here. He is a young SCCA member with Smoketown Brewing Station on the side of that car. Luke Pfeiffer is back again in the black and teal car, and a whole bunch of other drivers. There's a lot of people here, Tom, that we know can win this championship. This might be the most competitive season we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think there's two drivers that I really want to call out first and foremost. The first one being Paul Darling, who has been kind of the bridesmaid a couple of times in this series. He's always been super competitive and was actually really key in the championship for DJ Alessandrini when he won a couple of years back. And Paul was really his practice partner, kind of his unofficial teammate on the track. And he now has inherited Alex LaRose kind of as a practice partner along with another couple of drivers. But Paul Darling is certainly a driver to watch. And the other driver for me is, as I just lost it on the list. Uh-oh.
Looking at Ryan Maloney, perhaps? Thomas Bresson?
No, Jonathan White.
Jonathan White,
who was
yes.
also incredibly competitive in last year's championship and in years past, but came up a little bit short, and he's back this year as well. If you notice, both of those cars have something in common. It's that they both have a black base.
Yeah, so there are colorations on the liveries here this season, and thanks to Stephen Burbage from Night Fox Designs for hooking us up with these awesome liveries based on the real ones on the real cars in the real series. There is a real SPEC MX-5 Challenge series that you can run in the real world. Now, the cars with the black base color, those are returning drivers that finished top 20 last season. The gray base colors, like we saw in the number 16 car, those were drivers that were here last season but didn't finish in the top 20 or race less than 70% of the events. The drivers with the white liveries are the rookies here, Tom, and there are a bunch of them, and they're going to have a lot of work to do to catch some of these guys that have been here for a couple of years.
Well, and you say there's a lot of white liveries, but there's also just a lot of cars. We have over 40 cars attempting to start tonight's race, and that's a really, really busy racetrack, even if we have 4 miles of ribbon to work with. 40 cars is a lot.
And you say 4 miles of ribbon. Well, that 4 miles is Road America. It's a 4-mile racetrack with 14 corners. Tom, take us through a lap here at Road America.
Well, you start on the longest straightaway. That is at the bottom of your screen. Down into turn 1, a super fast right-hander, a little bit of a kink at turn 2, then a really kind of leveling out corner at turn 3, a critical run down towards one of those big drafting and passing opportunities at turn 5. That's the lowest point on the circuit. Then a climb up the hill to turn 6, a little flick through there, flat through turn 7, and a big braking zone through turn 8. Interestingly, from turn 8 down to Canada Corner, through that carousel, through the kink, that is the longest flat-out zone in these cars. They're flat the entire way. And then you're hard on the brakes at Canada Corner down there at turn 12, a climb up through the forest at turn 13, flat out as well, and then a really, really key corner for this lap, turn 14. We'll talk about that in a little bit later, but that's a lap at Road America.
We are going to talk about this a little bit later. If you've just joined us, you're watching the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge, the first round of many this season. We're in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, the virtual version of it. In fact, for this first round of the season, we'll head to Summit Point in 2 weeks. This series will run on a bi-weekly basis, I think without a whole lot of exceptions. So it'll be basically every other week here, Wednesday nights at 8:30 Eastern. We mentioned qualifying is underway. Times are starting to land on the board here, Tom. Scott Angelo is a new name this year. He's got the white base livery, the number 68 car. He's currently the quickest here in qualifying of the 2:54.4. However, we're going to see times go a lot quicker than that.
Well, yeah, that's actually not very representative of the pace at all because we have so many cars. A number of the drivers start their lap from pit lane and they actually get a time on their out lap. So all the times on the board you see so far are technically out laps. The fast drivers you're going to see are going to be in probably sub 2 minutes and 40. We may see some 39s, 38s, 37s depending on pace for this qualifying session. So once you start to see those as they start to tumble now, Paul Darling goes to the top immediately with a 2:36.5. That's actually a half second faster than we saw in practice. So these drivers are just getting faster and faster already.
And already teaming up and finding a buddy to race with. I think that's going to be a key factor here. Utilizing the draft. We'll talk about it a bit more in detail later, Tom, but basically you want to use the car in front of you as basically a snowplow for air. You want to push all that air out of the way so that you can follow them and have less drag on your race car. Now, a reminder to those that might not be familiar with iRacing, these are all real people competing online together, and their actions are very, very real. They can make you mad, they can make you happy, but all this is happening in real time from drivers all over the country and the world competing together in the iRacing.com simulator. So this this is a really cool environment. Paul Darling jumps to the top of the board, a 2:36.525. That's a bit closer and more representative of the times we're going to see in qualifying.
Yeah, that's a really quick time, and if you pay attention to where he is on track, he's got a number of cars around him that he's working with, and one of them is Jonathan White. He had a couple other cars around that I missed the numbers on, but to take the realism one step further, we actually have a number of real-world drivers and stewards that are also in the server right now paying attention to what's going on. So we're watching as commentators, but typically in iRacing, there's just kind of a self-policing level of intervention that might happen, but we add on top of that a real race steward box with a couple of people in there to keep track of what's going on. Then we have real penalties assigned in real time. They're communicating to drivers via voice and via chat in text on the game. So this really is, I think, of all the series I've ever been exposed to, probably the most realistic as far as what you'd experience on a real race weekend.
And everyone's asking, well, why should I listen to Tom O'Gorman? Well, you're a real driver yourself. You were a 2-time champion in TC America and a 4-time winner in IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in an Audi and Honda Type R TCR car. So you've got experience in the real world. iRacing is a sim that you've used quite a bit for leisure and as sort of a tool at times. But there's a lot that translates here. I actually got the chance to drive an NA Miata here a couple months ago at Road America in real life, and I was amazed at how much translated directly from the sim to the racetrack. And a lot of it was about the familiarity with the racetrack. And you mentioned some drivers have race cars or some kind of weekend track toy that they run. If they've been to this track in real life, that might help them in the other direction. They might have more experience in the sim because they know the track in the real world.
For sure, and ironically, I actually got my motorsport start with the Miata as well. It was an NB Miata in autocross. But sim racing was really key to me getting exposed to motorsports in a way before I was even able to drive cars. You know, I started 12, 13 years old when I shifted over from playing my PlayStation with a controller to finding a simulator and getting the controller or getting the steering wheel and kind of spiraling out of control. And here I sit, addicted to racing the same way that all these guys are. Here's another super competitive driver every single season. Chris Henn, up from the New England area, has been a really, really quick driver. Good to see him back as well. He sits a little further down in the order right now, 7th.
We call him the postman because he likes to send it, Tom. So we're going to see him make some cool dives. Right now, 7th here in qualifying. Paul Darling is still at the top of the board, and famously at Circuit of the Americas, where we had our season finale last season, was very, very close to winning the championship there. It was contact between him and Jonathan White that ended the season hopes for both of them, where Ken Howe-Seal, who is no longer allowed to race here because he won it last season, he was able to sneak on through. But Paul Darling was the favorite a lot last season, and he is just quietly consistent, and that will win you a championship.
Yeah, he's super consistent and quiet in general. He kind of flies under the radar a little bit. He's fairly unassuming about his abilities in the car, pretty humble about it, but he's always super, super competitive, and anything we see him here in iRacing also has a car that he takes to the track in real life, so he has been exposed to driving on a racetrack in real life competitively, which is super cool too. But you see them all working together down that front straightaway. Look at this train of cars, most of them with that black base livery, working together here in qualifying. They still have enough time for, I'd say, maybe 2, well, they're starting 1 flyer, so they might actually get 3 more flyers even, starting 1 down into turn 1 now.
And we mentioned this racetrack, and we went through a lap around it. One of the things we really didn't mention is how fast it is around here. The straightaways, these are not necessarily the fastest race cars you can climb into, Tom. They've got, what, 150, 160 horsepower, but they'll be doing 120 to 130 miles an hour at the end of the straightaways, and there is a lot of straightaway here at Road America, so things are going to happen quickly. The other thing that happens when you have long straightaways, you have long braking zones. You spend a lot of time slowing down, a lot of time downshifting. These cars are H-pattern manual gearboxes. They have 6 speeds, you'll only be using 5. But how you get through the gears and how you get down back to the first and second gear is going to be super crucial to make speed around you. You can't cheat with these cars a whole lot. You got to shift them heel toe downshifting the old-fashioned way. They're a lot of fun to drive, but they take a little bit of work.
Yeah, and they if you're unfamiliar with iRacing, the car we're looking at is the NC MX-5, the car that had a production run from 2005 to 2015. These cars were introduced in iRacing, a fairly early production model, so we're probably looking at a 2006 to 2008-ish model. So it's the 2-liter 6-speed. They do have the 5-speed in the game as well, but these are the 6-speed versions. And actually, I happen to know from talking to some of the drivers that you do occasionally have to use 6th here at Road America, specifically because you get to the top as 5th gear without draft, but with the draft you might need to try 6th real quick just to get that last mile an hour if you really need it.
Keep an eye on Riley Thompson here in this 58 out of the Mid-South region here in the United States. He is a really young kid who is very talented, and I would expect him to be competitive this season. He joined us late last year in the points. Didn't really get a chance to go up and compete for wins because he joined so late, the last 2 or 3 rounds. But starting a full-time season effort, only 10th in qualifying, I think Riley's going to race better than he will qualify. So let's keep an eye on the youngster in the 58 car.
And he's kind of in that danger zone of, qualifying isn't everything when we're talking about draft racing, and we'll get to that conversation about drafting in a little bit. But once you've started to knock outside of the top 10-ish, your chances of getting to the front become exponentially harder. So, the guys on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rows may not have to start to fret just yet, but the guys on the 5th row, so, Henn and Burke, now Thompson knocked down to 11th, their night is going to become a little more challenging than the guys on the front couple of rows.
Let's remember what our format is here for tonight as well. We're going to run 2 races back-to-back, 20 minutes apiece, and you will actually grid race 2 where you finish in race number 1. So those things are going to translate and carry on to the second race here in the evening. So there's actually 2 chances to win a race tonight, and you can get a mulligan if you finish badly in 1, but if you want to win this championship, Tom, realistically, you can't have more than 1 bad race. So you better not leave here with a torn-up race car, because when we head to Summit Point in 2 weeks, the points battle continues, and it will leave you behind if you have a wrecked race car.
So still Darling at the top of the board. Nathan Saxon sits 2nd. Ryan Maloney is 3rd. Jonathan White 4th, with Mitchell Peak 5th. That's your top 5. Looks like Mitchell Peak and Nathan Saxon are both off track, but I see I believe Jonathan White is in a little group of cars working their way down towards turn 5. This is the 2nd longest straight piece of track here, but it is the 3rd longest sustained period of throttle here at this track because, again, that run from turn 8 to Canada corner, whoa, they blew it there if they were setting up for a flyer, and that might bring us to our maybe first key to the race, actually.
Yeah, let's have a look at our keys to the race here this evening. Draft aggression, Tom. Long straightaways here at Road America, long racetrack. You'll be spending a lot of time following other cars. Yeah, I alluded to it early on. Road America takes a specific skill in draft racing because you have to pick and choose when to be aggressive. Typically at a racetrack in the SPEC MX-5 series, we're going to see 1, maybe 2 really good, obvious draft passing zones. Here at Road America, we have like 5 or 6 or 7 of them. And not only are they really long drafting zones, but they're also big braking zones, which means passing opportunities, and it's really easy to kind of misjudge how much speed you have. You have to have practiced being in that draft. So I think that's why I say it takes a specific extra bit of savvy to succeed here with the drafting and the dynamics between cars in SPEC MX-5s. We have a short pace lap here, so your starting grid will be rolling off on the left. Let's continue with our keys to the race here, Tom. Turn 14, we're looking right at it. The final turn here on this racetrack, but it's critical for especially the end of the race. Well, a lot of times, we'll see the winner determined between the exit of turn 14 and the start-finish line because it's a long way between those two. So turn 14 is going to be really key. And also, it's kind of the first day of school. We're returning to the SPEC MX-5 series for the first time in 2021. We've had 2 seasons under our belt. A lot of these drivers know each other, but a lot of them don't. And I think that this is going to be a key moment to learn not only who your competitors are, but how to race with them. Again, a lot of new drivers, a lot of drivers that have been here. This is the 3rd annual season of the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman. Thanks for being with us here tonight. Prizes on the line for each race, thanks to Penguin RC Simulation. Of course, we have to thank SCDA Driving Schools, Level Up Racing School, as well as Winding Road Racing. All right, Tom, the starting lineup is going to roll on the bottom of the screen as we get rolling. Paul Darling in first, Nathan Saxon on the outside of that front row. And then it's Ryan Maloney in the 65. Jonathan White will start 4th. In row number 3, starting in the 5th spot, it's going to be Mitchell Peak in the number 56. Chris Taylor rolls off 6th in the number 53. Then on the 4th row, starting in 7th, is going to be Ismael Basso, and alongside in the 99, Brandon Hawken. In row number 5, starting in 9th place, it'll be Logan Walker in the number 37. New name here tonight, white livery on his car. Chris Henn, the postman, rolls off 10th. And then in 11th, it's going to be Zach Burke, who dethroned Riley Thompson late in the session in the 58, starting to his outside. We'll let the rest of these scroll on the bottom of the field here, Tom. Again, we got a short pace lap just waiting for Scott McIntyre and a few other drivers towards the tail of the field. They will not make the grid. So it looks like we will have 39 drivers starting this race. Michael Doling all the way at the back. Rolling through turn number 14, it's time to go racing for the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Thanks for joining us here on the Winding Road YouTube channel. And you're about to watch a spectacular race. 2 20-minute races back to back to back. Here we go. Up the hill here at Road America, the National Park of Speed. At the end of the season in May, we'll get to crown one of these drivers a champion and give them the chance of a lifetime to drive a real race car at Circuit of the Americas. Paul Darling, Nathan Saxon, Maloney, White, and Mitchell Peak are on the front row. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Road America in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Paul Darling, clean getaway, clears the number 16 of Nathan Saxon. He'll follow the line in the run down to turn 1. Field fanning out now, double file. Everyone being very careful here, Tom, not to get into an incident on the opening lap in the opening corner. Through the first corner, 3 wide, a bit of a stack up here in the middle of the field. So far, so good. There's a little bit of trouble. A couple cars getting together, bumping and banging. The 09 car of George Fike scattering. But I think we've gotten through turn 1 and turn 2 without any incidents. Now at the exit of turn 3, we'll run down the back straightaway here.
Good clean start for Paul Darling, and then in second place, Saxon slots in behind on the front straight. Jonathan White was actually able to sweep around the outside of Ryan Maloney in turn 1, but they have gotten a little bit of a breakaway towards the front, and then the rest of the massive field sweeps under the bridge down between turns 4 and 5, coming to that first braking zone, and it's actually a bit of a breakaway. Look at that at the front.
2 cars, Darling and Saxon, nose to tail. There's the 33, sent it in already up the inside is the postman trying to grab a spot. He's up to 6th. A couple of cars getting into turn number 5. Are we going to get through here without any incidents? I think we've done so.
You know, we got a driver turned on the exit of turn 5. He got turned hard to the outside wall. I missed the name.
It's Chris Henn in the 33.
Sure is. There he is, trying to get back going again, and it was a car to his outside.
56 car. Mitchell Peak got a piece of him. Let's go back and see. Maybe did he crowd him here, Tom? I think that might be the case as he comes off. Oh, yeah, just there wasn't quite clear and gets turned off into the concrete there and hit that wall pretty hard.
Yeah, that's tough because you have to use that curbing to be quick, but when you're side by side with somebody, you kind of owe it to them to let them back on the track, but they barely had any overlap as we have more incidents with the 74 car. Christopher Namuk gets turned in turn 8, gets the thing turned back around with significant damage on the front and rear of that 74 car.
Leaders through the kink, high speed here, maybe just a lift. You could probably full throttle it once the tires are up to 10th here. Darling, Saxon, White, Taylor, and Maloney, the top 5 as they streak through the kink for the opening time here, Tom. So far, so good. Haven't really torn anybody up other than those front 2 that the 2 that we mentioned a moment ago. Now the 3rd car in line is Jonathan White. You mentioned him as a potential competitor. Bit of a breakaway. Logan Walker holding up the train here back in 8th.
So what was a 2-car breakaway is now right back to a constant stream of these MX-5s as they sweep up through turn 13. They're side by side at the lead, but the rest of the field looking pretty single file as now Paul Darling has an attack from Saxon. Saxon's going to get the inside through turn 14 and a run up the hill. Look at him, 2x2. Who picks who? Darling on the outside with the 53 behind of Chris Taylor. The 22 of Jonathan White is picking Nathan Saxon.
I'm a little bit surprised that we're racing this hard this early here, Tom. I would have thought they'd get into line and try to drive away, but they're going to race, and here comes the 22 car of White to the inside, 2x2 at the front of the field. Darling jukes to the right just a little bit, and there's a driver at the back of this watching with excitement. That's Brandon Hawken in the 99, new driver to the series, and look at this lead battle.
Darling with the assertive move across the nose of Saxon. Saxon had to actually check up past turn-in to make sure he didn't get into the back of him as we watch from Brandon Hawkins' nose. He sits 6th, and there's a lot of action in front, and this is what I'm talking about. It takes a specific kind of savvy to understand from when you're in 6th. Yeah, you might have a lot of draft to pass the guy, but where do you go with all that speed? What happens at the apex if you arrive too fast? And we're going to see all of these, actually now 7 cars, come together towards that big braking zone down here towards turn 7.
Nathan Saxon pops out a line to driver's left into the braking zone. These cars do have ABS, and you'll be using most of it here, hooking the left curb, and now the run up the hill to turn number 6. This is a really tricky off-camber corner. The car gets light up here. Not a lot of mechanical grip as you crest this hill here, Tom. It's a trickier corner than it looks.
Yeah, big momentum. Darling around the outside to, again, maintain that point over Saxon. Taylor is now slotted into 3rd. Check it out. Jonathan White actually dropped all the way back to 6th with that exchange on the front straightaway, and he's got a mirror full of the 56. I think that's Peak just behind him. So a lot of shuffling in the 3rd to 5th, 6th area right here on this lap.
Looking deeper in the field, this is all the way back here for 31st and 32nd. Matthew Cridland in the 73 car, Michael Doling, Brian Allen, Brian Sohn of Penguin RC Simulation offering some of the prizing here in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Pop out a line for the 78 car of Doling on the 73 at Cridland into turn number 8. That's real tight. A lot of white cars back here, Tom. It seems like the experience up front is where the speed is here tonight, and that's something I sort of expected given the challenges of actually extracting speed here at Road America. Easy track to drive, hard to be fast.
Certainly took note of that as the starting grid rolled down. A lot of those black-based cars are towards the front. We're taking a look back at one of them. Saxon to the outside this time, down to Canada corner, deep on the brakes. We still got 7 laps to go, so we're going to see this happen every single lap. And it's that kind of math equation of, okay, if I'm on this lap and I'm in this position, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm in the correct position by the time the checkered flag waves? And they're also going to be experimenting with, can I actually complete the pass before the checkered flag flies at the start-finish line if I'm in this position, side-by-side through turn 14?
Jonathan White going back by Brennan Hawken in the 99. They're going to run up the hill side-by-side. Curious about one of the drivers I expected to be super competitive in this series, and that was Alex LaRose. And it looks like he didn't get off to an amazing start. He's back in 18th place here, Tom. Started this race in 17th and has gone effectively nowhere. Surprised by this.
And at this point, you really have to just start to focus on being consistent because this is a long championship. It's 9 rounds, 18 races. So, you know, an 18th place finish isn't necessarily a death sentence, but being consistent is. And if you get a DNF as you're racing for 18th, that's a big deal.
Leaders through turn number 2 here. Whoa, big track out wide. I think that's Chris. Nope, that's, I'm trying to see what driver that was. I think Chris Henn is done for the day, unfortunately. He might get a chance to roll in race number 2 and regain some of those points that he lost. Only seen a couple small incidents throughout the field, but look at the weaving we're starting to see. Ryan Maloney all the way in the grass with Paul Darling forcing him to the right.
Yeah, Darling not giving him any room at all. Saxon went through around the outside of turn 1 last time we saw, and now the 53 of Taylor showing the nose up the inside as Maloney lost a little bit of momentum using the grass. A bunch of the drivers choosing the inside lane here, and one of them is Jonathan White. He's all the way back to 7th now as Hawken went through as well, so White falling the wrong direction. Hawken picks up a couple of spots.
Trouble behind him. Mitchell Peak in the 56. Turn 5 was a trouble spot for him earlier. He's found himself turned around now in turn number 5. Let's go back and see how he found his way here, and it was with a little bit of help from the 13 of Zach Burke. Back a little farther and see if maybe he got pinched down there. There's just a big stack up here. Then, oh yeah, turns in, and that was just a late dive by the 13, I think, Tom. And that's what sent the 56 car around.
Yeah, once you get up on that curb, too, it's tough to stop the car, but he was big commitment in there. And unfortunately, into the quarter panel of the 56. So turn 5 is probably not the 56's favorite corner tonight, as that's 2 incidents in 3 laps that he's experienced there.
Here's Gustavo Purgato in the number 11. That's the green and black car to the outside of Mark Palunin in the 38. There's cars off track again. That's Luke Pfeiffer in the 06. That's the car we saw off a moment ago with the 51 of Steve Ficacci. They've had it coming together and have gone off the road. They'll get back on. Let's see, maybe we can catch that as well. I think they're just, watch the 51. He's actually just going to get loose and get tagged together, and I think the 06 did a pretty good job not ending up in the Armco there.
Yeah, both of them did really, and that carousel is almost
flat.
No,
the leader, Zach Burke, hard in the fence at the exit of Canada corner. That's a big hit there for him, and he's out of the race. That was a huge wreck. Let's see, did he have help there or just get loose all on his own? Probably caught the gravel right there with the left rear tire. Oh, man, Tom, that's a bad way to go out.
Just dropped the left rear, and he was sitting in about 8th, so he was doing everything he could to try to work his way up towards that lead pack of 7. You just got to push as hard as you possibly can. Overstepped it a bit, but you hear the tires begging for mercy. Tried to stay in it and just tank slapped it into the concrete.
Oh, man, that's a nasty hit there. And we didn't really talk a whole lot about track limits here tonight because Road America is not a track where if you go wide, you really gain a lot of speed, but it is a really bad place to go off the racetrack. There's walls and gravel everywhere. And if you find yourself, especially at the exit of turn 1, there's a tire wall there about 20 feet to the left. You hit that, your day's over.
Yeah, it's not a forgiving place. And this front 6 have now broken away with that incident behind them. They're pretty much clear of the draft of the rest of the field, so now they get to kind of bicker amongst themselves as now we're watching the battle for 8th on back. I think is at the starting with the 40 of Basso, Walker, Thompson, Zhu all in that battle, but at the front, Saxon and Maloney working well together. Paul Darling was trying it up into turn 1, and he got shuffled back big time. Where did he go? He's way back there. The 55, the black and yellow car, was the leader pole sitter, and now all the way back to 6th, barely clinging on into the draft.
Yeah, not going the right direction here for sure. Deeper in the field, Alex LaRose, he's grabbed 6 spots in the last couple laps. He's up to 12th place now in the number 26 car. Jack Sanchez in behind him, a returning driver in that number 23. Again, the black livery denoting that he was here and finished top 20 in points. So let's not sleep on some of these guys back here as they chuck the car through turn number 6. Murphy Nichols in the 05 car rather, having a battle here with Raven Hopkins in the 93.
Interesting to note, though, at the front, we have a gray livery car at the front. Nathan Saxon, a partial season driver from last year, and Ryan Maloney is new this year in the white livery. Another white livery behind, and Brandon Hawken, who's made a great charge in the last lap and a half in the 99 car. He's going to be the white and kind of mustard yellow car there. And they've shuffled all the experience behind them, starting with Chris Taylor in the black and neon yellow. Then it's the black and white of Jonathan White and the black and darker yellow of Paul Darling. Here's a look through the kink, flat out easy at this point, and Darling is kind of coming back to this one. But you have to wonder, do they have any sort of, not necessarily allegiance, but do you want to work together as the experienced drivers? Or do you want to, try to mire the other guy behind you almost, because they got more experience?
Well, Tom, there's 40 drivers in this field, and if you're racing a guy that's brand new on race number 1, and you're at the front of the field, I would say you're going to feel pretty confident working with them. I think if there's 40 drivers, there's a whole lot of new ones, and if there's a new guy up front, he's probably pretty good. So I'd venture to say that you'd probably want to work together. But it's interesting to see that there's Brandon Hawken and Ryan Maloney, all new names to this series. Whoa, big slide there by Ismael Basso, chasing it through turn 14. Interesting to see that experience at the front, in that front pack at least, seems to not be doing as much for the drivers there as it is in the middle of the field. Now, Jack Sanchez has just gone around for a loop at the exit of turn 14. He'll get back rolling as we got a battle for the lead again.
Side by side for Saxon and Maloney. Maloney's up the inside in the 65 and takes the lead now into turn 1, or at least a nose ahead by a bumper. Deep on the brakes at the second brake marker, and actually they're going to work together. That's a smart, savvy move by Nathan Saxon. He knows going side by side through that corner is going to lose them way more time than going single file, so he doesn't force the issue. That's actually what lost Paul Darling all of those positions. He forced the issue into turn 1, went side by side with a couple of cars, and just got shuffled to the back. So he's not out of this one. He's back up to 5th, but a little bit of experience showing for Nathan Saxon. I think that's a smart move.
Getting a little racy back here. How about 3 wide? That's the 31 car up the middle, Jordan Bachmeyer in the 18th spot. Had to keep watching out both sides of the windows there for a minute, but they've gotten sorted back out. Some smoke clouds and dust clouds from drivers running off track. I wonder, did someone blow their motor maybe? A lot of smoke up the road.
Yeah, I do see smoke coming from someone ahead. It's maybe
no.
The black and pink car.
Ismael Basso is who blew the motor. That car is destroyed, and this is what happens, Tom, when you downshift a little bit too early, over-rev the engine. iRacing does simulate that as Steve Ficacci goes a little wide in turn 5.
Well, there's a couple of corners on this track where you have to downshift the MX-5 from 4th to 3rd, but only for a moment to kind of tuck the nose. And as we see another car lose his engine.
Oh, it's still the same car.
Same car, yeah.
Oh, there goes Jack Sanchez at the exit of the corner.
Oh, and Basso's got nowhere to go. Insult to injury as he stuffs the blown motor into the side of that car. But again, you have to grab the, for a flyer lap anyway, you have to grab that downshift, and you wonder if he missed it in turn 3, and unfortunately blew the motor down towards down that long straightaway. But back at the front, Ryan Maloney controls the pace over Nathan Saxon. Hawkins still in 3rd with Taylor, Darling, and White all in the battle still.
This is really interesting to look at. Oh, as you see the 53 car go way wide at the exit of the kink. Look at this gap. This is a 3.5 second gap from Jonathan White back to Logan Walker. It's really just the front 6 than everybody else. They can focus and they can actually race amongst themselves now for these last couple of laps and not have to worry about the rest of the field catching back up.
And that's what tends to happen with the drafting battles, is there's only so many cars that can safely run together before eventually that grenade goes off. You pull the pin on it at the start of the race and eventually these big holes form. A lot of damage on the back of the 53, and I wonder how much that's going to hurt him down these straightaways. If he ever gets out front, he might be a sitting duck more so than the other cars. Look at the momentum Paul Darling carries through, and we're coming up on half distance. 4 laps to go right now, 3 as they cross the line, and all of the learning has pretty much been done at this point. They know where they want to be by the checkered flag, and now it's just getting there.
Cross the line here, you mentioned it, 3 laps to go, a little past halfway, actually deeper in the field. How about this? There's a 96 car, Benson Ty, Scott Angelo on the inside. Brian Chabelski joining us in the number 12 car, that orange and gray. And a couple other battles happening throughout the field. Murphy Nichols is damaged. That car has run into something or been run into. Unfortunately, I would venture to say the latter, given most of that damage is on the rear and side of that car. And Brandon Hawken jumps into 2nd place over Ryan Maloney. Really impressed with Hawken and Maloney specifically. We know Maloney from some other SCCA racing that we've seen him do. Brandon Hawken, though, completely new name to me, and this is one of the wild cards. I didn't expect to have a driver like him jump up here and be battling in the top group.
Well, and Saxon went by on the way into turn 1. It looks like Hawken went with him, and now Maloney's getting the shove back up the inside towards turn 5 by the damaged Chris Taylor. Almost 3 wide down into turn 5. Lots of curb for Saxon. The 99 tries to cling around the outside, but they're going to slot back in line as Paul Darling is still trying to work his way up just a little bit further. Back side by side around the outside maybe for Jonathan White. Does he get it done?
Wrong look there as he's going to stay up the inside now, back out for turn number 7. That's a high velocity corner, tricky to hang tough on the inside there. But White and Darling, that is a potent combination in 5th and 6th here, Tom.
It is, but right now Saxon is looking like the most savvy of the group. He's made smart choices when he's leading. He's made smart choices when he wasn't. And again, it takes that extra bit of understanding how the ebb and flow comes at Road America. Saxon looks like he's got that one figured out. I'm surprised to see Darling seems to be struggling with getting any further up the field. You have to wonder if there's maybe some damage on the front that matches the damage on the back of Chris Taylor. But as I say that, I saw the damage on the front of Jonathan White's car. The black and white machine at the back of this looks like he's got the most damage. Yeah, sure enough, there it is.
Yeah, he's got a pretty sizable dent in the nose of that MX-5, and while normally aerodynamics are not crucially important on some of the tracks we're going to run later in the season, they are in fact very important here and will crush your top speed at this track. So Jonathan White tucks in behind Paul Darling as they roll through Canada Corner. Next time by, 2 laps to go, 8 miles of racing left.
I might say the aero is more important in iRacing than it is in real life. One of our participants in this series, Michael Borden, actually won the SECA championship runoffs with his hood popped up just a little bit. So he won without that aero, but unfortunately here in iRacing that becomes exponentially harder as it's modeled to be pretty severe. Nathan Saxon at the front, Nathan Saxon still at the front with Hawken and Maloney in pursuit.
2 laps to go here in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. This is only race number 1 of 2 that we'll do tonight. Again, we're going to set them up by how they finish and go for race number 2. There's Hawken with the slipstream out to driver's right. Going to look for the lead here down into turn number 1, and the rookie goes to the top spot.
Still going to be side by side on the brakes. We've seen the inside and outside both work, but Saxon tucks in. Once again, good call. And interestingly, I haven't seen someone make the run from turn 14 to the start-finish line and gain position. It looks like it takes a lot longer than that. So I think you want to be leading into turn 14, which is not always the case here at Road America, but these things really compressing down now as Hawken pulling away a little bit from the front. Saxon's still with them, and these guys are closer than ever.
Alex LaRose down pit lane with a drive-through penalty for something. I'm not exactly sure what, but he has gone down pit road to serve a penalty and will come out back in 30th place. Not what he needed here. For the top spot, though, side by side into turn number 5, 2 wide, 2 deep, as they roll down into the tightest corner on the racetrack. Way out wide goes the 99 of Hawkins. Is that even legal? He ran beyond the curbing on corner entry. Typically, that'll get you an incident there, Tom. Got to watch to make sure you don't draw the ire of the race control.
Well, in real life, also, those curbs are so rippled that you wouldn't use them, but they're a little bit flat here in iRacing, as you know, and if you can use them, why not? Go for it. They're still side by side towards turn 7. Saxon's getting a little bit of a breakaway, which will give him some relief as Paul Darling makes the move around the outside of turn 7. He's deep on the brakes in the darker yellow of the 2 cars, makes the move into turn 8 and gets it done.
Oh, nicely done by Paul Darling. He is moving forward. He's going to have a lap and a half left to get up there, 3 more spots to grab. You mentioned Nathan Saxon pulling away. This is a little bit dangerous, though, because if you pull a gap, that just makes that draft effect even more strong as you come onto the front straightaway. That is going to exacerbate that effect, and Brandon Hawken will just be able to rocket right by him. But there's still 4 miles after that Saxon will get to go back around. So maybe this is kind of a reverse psychology chess match here.
Perhaps, yeah. He's got about 6/10 as you see there on the left side of your screen on the ticker. And I think he'd be really safe if this was the last lap, but unfortunately for him, it is not. So they're going to have another whole lap. You see him clawing their way back, now down on only 4/10 by the time they hit the brakes for Canada Corner. So Hawken and Maloney closing back in. Darling has worked his way back closer to where he wants to be as they come up through turn 13 now. But Saxon, look how safe he would be if this was the last lap.
Coming through turn number 14. Next time by will be the last lap of this race. 1 minute and 37 seconds to go in this 20-minute timed race. We climb up the hill now. Saxon going to dive to the inside to try to break that draft. Everyone weaving like you're watching the Indy 500 down the front straightaway. Albeit a little slower pace, but now under the flag stand here, the white flag in the air. One more time around Road America for race 1 in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Here comes Maloney.
Maloney pops, and Darling goes with him, tries to come up the inside. They're going to go side by side through turn 1.
Oh, man, this is making me nervous. Can we do this here? 4th gear through this corner. Maloney's in deep. Hawken going to try to carry the speed on the outside, going to run out of racetrack, gets the tires in the dirt on exit. But Maloney is through now, and Paul Darling is going to help push him by, and now Hawkins drops to second, now make it third, now make it fourth as they roll through turn 3.
Chris Taylor dropped into the dirt on the way into the corner, had a huge slide on the way in, and lost a little bit of time between them. Look at him, just no momentum coming onto this front straightaway, but Saxon weaving all over the place. Maloney trying to hunt with him. Darling's got a really good draft there in third. Do they make a move into turn 5, or do they focus on the leader? You got to make one choice.
You're running out of straightaway. There's a big dive from Hawkins on the 55 of Darling. Gets on the brakes, the car wobbling with the ABS underfoot through 5. The 55 car goes out wide. He's going to lose a spot here to Hawkins in this left-hander unless he can roll the outside, which is really hard to do through turn number 6.
He's going to try it, though. Look at the momentum around there. Floating all the way out to the curb. Makes it work and now inherits the inside for turn 7. This is a good spot to be. Both of them will be able to go flat out easily here, but they've lost a bunch of time. That might have solidified the nail in the coffin for third and fourth there as you're looking at the leaders, the purple and gray of Nathan Saxon, the white and maroon of Maloney. Oh, Darling's making a big effort.
That was a big slide through turn number 8. He got it gathered back up. Maloney chucked it down in there, but couldn't quite make it to the apex. He missed clipping the curb and slid a little wide. But Darling and Maloney on this straightaway, if they can close in, I don't think it's completely out of the question just yet.
I think back to last lap, it was 6/10 coming through the carousel. It's 6/10 right now for the lead. I think Saxon, if he puts the last 3 corners of this lap together perfectly, I think he's safe. The guy that may not be safe is Maloney, as Darling is starting to close up just a bit.
Down the Kettle Bottoms region here into the braking zone. Big effort by Maloney to close up through the dirt. He's a little closer, 3/10 now here, Tom. If he nails turn 14, he could get there. It's going to be a lot of effort, though, and it's going to require maybe a mistake on Nathan Saxon's part, but it's not impossible. Checkered flag is waving. Who gets back here first? It's a long way to the start-finish line. Maloney through turn 14. This is going to be a good run here, Tom, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Here they come. Drag race up the hill at Road America.
It's a valiant effort, but it may not be enough time yet. This is what we've seen every single lap. It hasn't worked to make it back, but look at them. Oh, he's got it maybe this time.
Here he comes to the checkers. Saxon wins it by a 79 thousandths of a second over Ryan Maloney. Paul Darling, Hawkins, and Taylor are your top 5. Here's a couple other battles going on behind you. Kevin Zhu, 7th place over Logan Walker by 58 thousandths. Here's Thomas Bressy across the line by a couple tenths. That's 11th place over Luke Pfeiffer. And the rest of the field now streaming to the start-finish. Race over, but this is only race 1 of 2, Tom. We get to do this all over again. Now we get to grid by how we finish. But Nathan Saxon picks up his first win of the season, and wins are really hard to get in this series. And if you're looking at this season-long effort, this is a great way to start.
Yeah, and great control. I mean, I'm really impressed with the again, the controlled aggression and picking his moves in that 16 car. And for the rest of the field to not even be able to run him down as he led those last 2 laps, just a really good control and pace from that 16 car. I think he's established himself as one of the ones to chase.
Having a look at your race results before we move on to the second race here of the evening. Disappointing finish, I think, for a couple drivers, including the one that I picked, which was Alex LaRose. He did not finish up as high as I would have expected. The penalty certainly didn't help. LaRose finished unofficially 28th in the first of 2 races here tonight. All right, time to re-rack and restack and go again for our second race here of the evening. And we're going to be in a quick warm-up period here, so kind of debrief and talk about what we just saw. What did we learn about the draft there, Tom? It's not as effective as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, just looking back at our keys to the race, one of them was turn 14, and we expected it to be that you could win the race by being second place and drafting by the start-finish line. Turns out to be the opposite. You want to be leading into turn 14 and get a good run through there, because I really do think that our second-place finisher in that race, Ryan Maloney, had the perfect execution of the last lap and just didn't have enough time to get to the win. So now these drivers all know you want to be leading into turn 14. However you get there is however you get there. But that's the big takeaway from that one. I also think that there's a couple of drivers who made some mistakes, maybe overdrove a little bit, and will maybe be able to take this 4 or 5 minute breather to reset and then come in a little bit calmer, a little more calculated into this second race. I
want to take a moment to thank our awesome sponsors for joining us for this season. Of course, season-end prizes by Level Up Racing School, providing the opportunity to test drive a real SPEC MX-5 race car. Penguin RC Simulation offering amazing sim racing hardware prizes. We've known the Penguin RC guys for a long time. Brian Sohn, on their website, you can get all sorts of sim racing gear. If you're into paddle shifters, magnetic paddle shifters, great additions to any of your sim racing stuff. Sportscar Driving Association, the SCDA provides the driving enthusiasts the opportunity to experience high-performance driving in a safe and controlled environment. You can visit them at www.scda1.com to learn more about them and their events at some of the best tracks on the East Coast. Also, Winding Road Racing letting us take over the YouTube channel here for a little bit tonight, Tom. We've got a whole bunch more of these races here this season. The next race will be at Summit Point on January 27th in 2 weeks' time. Then Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Sebring, Road Atlanta, Watkins, Glen, WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna, Seca, and we'll finish off things on May 5th at Circuit of the Americas. If you're interested in joining, it's too late for 2021, but make sure that you're tuned in to the SPEC MX-5 social media for 2022 to get yourself this opportunity and race with these guys right here. And keep an eye out. They will post when those applications open up in early 2022. All right, well, a minute and a half left here in our warm-up. One thing we didn't go over in the pre-race was the weather conditions. Not usually a huge factor here, Tom, but the track has cooled from race number 1. Will that be of any effect in terms of lap time or pace?
Well, I think it's mostly just paying attention to that detail or feeling the surface out. It is accurately modeled here in the simulator, and if you're paying attention, you can know that you can go a little bit faster. If you're a muscle memory driver who's just kind of doing the same thing every time, you may not be able to capitalize on that so well if you're not paying attention to it. So it's something notable. The other notable thing that I was just looking back through, some of the big improvers from that last race. Brandon Hawken finished 4th from 8th on the grid. Kevin Zhu, who came home 7th, actually rose from 13th actually, but the big climber was Nick Del Campo. He came home 10th from 25th on the grid. So rising up, I mean, is that almost half the grid to come up to the top 10? That 15 car of Nick Del Campo might be somebody to keep an eye on in the second race.
Yeah, Nick Del Campo had some really strong runs last season. Couldn't quite parlay it into a championship, but he is running the black livery car, which tells you that he has been here before. While we have a moment, we want to thank you all for joining us here on the Winding Road YouTube channel. Typically, this is all about point-of-view driving videos, Tom, and I remember popping in headphones and listening to the Toyota Tundras and whatever vehicle of the day may be, but this is a really cool YouTube channel, so subscribe for more. We'll be back joining you on Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 2 weeks from now for the second round of this championship, but make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and hit the bell when you see that link pop up so you don't miss when we join you live next 2 weeks from now for our second round. All right, warm-up is complete. Time to re-rack them, restack them, and grid up by our starting lineup, or our finishing lineup from race number 1, and we'll see where everyone stacks up for a second round of 20 minutes of action. All right, so as we wait here, calm day here at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. It's a little bit warmer here in the simulator than it is outside the windows at the moment here from our broadcasting booth. Let's roll down to the racetrack here now for our grid. On the left-hand side of the screen, Tom, is our starting lineup for our second race of the evening. Let's kick it off with our front row. Nathan Saxon in the number 16. Ryan Maloney will start on the outside of the front row in that 65.
And behind us going to be Paul Darling, and 4th place from race 1, Brandon Hawken.
In row number 3, it'll be Chris Taylor in the number 53, Jonathan White in the 22, then row number 4, Kevin Zhu and Logan Walker.
Then Riley Thompson, who climbed up a couple of spots as well, and Nick Del Campo from 25th to 10th. Thomas Bressi on the next row on the inside, Luke Pfeiffer on the outside.
Justin Hall, Mark Palunin in the number 38 and 64, Jordan Bachmeyer in the number 31, Gustavo Pergato rolls off 16th in the number 11.
Then Greg Profeta starting 17th, Elijah Kloft in 18th, Raven Hopkins in 19th, and Renaud Roland Hubert in 20th.
Steve Ficacci, Brian Chabelski, Matthew Cridlin, Michael Dolan 21st through 24th. And as we are now about ready to pace, we're going to roll back down to our field as they roll through turn 14 here, Tom. Time to go racing for a second time. We learned some things from race number 1. It's time to put them into action for race number 2. Another 8-lap event here at Road America for the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. I'm Kyle Heyer, joined by 4-time winner in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, Tom O'Gorman. Thanks for joining us here tonight. One more race. We'll talk to your race winners, and then we'll join you again in 2 weeks' time for round number 2. Up the hill slowly and steadily. Nathan Saxon in command of this. Flag waiting to go green. It's Maloney on the outside, and there it is. Green flag flies, racing once more in the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge at Road America, the run down to turn number 1.
Looks like a carbon copy of the start from last time, but this time Saxon is the one that sweeps across, and single file with Ryan Maloney now down into turn 1. Darling is still side by side with Hawken. Hawken chucks it around the outside and tries to keep it there.
I'm a little bit worried. I think we got a little bit brave maybe on the first time around, and no one ended up crashing out, but I worry that people got a little bit, would get too complacent, but nicely done. We get through turn 1 without any major incidents, even better than last time, actually. Now into turn 3, a bit of stack-ups here in the background, but out front, it's still Nathan Saxon. Could he sweep the first round here at Road America?
Well, he sure hopes so. A big accident in the back. One of the cars almost rolls over. It's one of the rookie cars that goes hard into the tires on the outside. The 68 car of Scott Angelo gets turned across the nose.
Whoa,
of one of the
wide.
experienced cars, and now things are getting exciting like you expected.
That's not going to work, guys. Get that sorted out real quick. Oh, man, the 40 Ismael Basso tried to make it work in the grass. That was never going to happen. Now through turn number 5. And these guys have finally learned that this racetrack is 32 feet wide at its narrowest point. And if you do the math, not quite sure you can get 4 Miatas stacked side by side like that, at least not at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you remember, Basso was up towards the top 10, and now with that blown motor, he was starting all the way at the back. He's probably frustrated that he's around a bunch of cars that he doesn't really want to be around, but he's still, I don't know if the grass was the way to get up towards the front quite so much. Maybe he's got nothing left to lose, as the bottom 10 cars or so are still fighting, but the rest of the field's worked their way out pretty well to a single file. Up back at the front, though, Saxon still enjoys 2 to 3 car lengths over Hawken, Maloney, Darling, and Taylor are the top 5.
I think Basso is just hoping that the steward wouldn't be looking back there, but it's pretty hard to miss when there's 4 cars wide on the back straightaway. Through the kink for the first time, you see Paul Darling hanging it all out, doing a little drift action through the kink. This always makes me nervous on the first lap on cold tires. Takes the tires about a half a lap to a lap to get up to full temperature and full stickiness. Now the run down to Canada corner, I think the most beautiful corner on this racetrack. And there's Thomas Bressi in the 24 car. That's a boop. And he's going to go off in Canada.
Looks like he had 2 on the grass when he went to the brakes, whether he meant to or not. I don't know if he got squeezed there, but he kind of knocked corners with somebody else, which sent him off towards the tire wall. It wasn't a major impact, but interesting to see here at the front, the top 6 breaking away a little bit again. Kevin Zeus trying to cling on in the 43. That's the black and pink car, but that top 6 is really establishing themselves as the class of the field here, not just by chance that they broke away last time, because they're doing it again.
Well, this is what I talked to you about before we even started this series, Tom, is every time you talk about racing Miatas at a track like this, you talk about a draft fest, and it is a little bit of that, but I think that these cars race better, in my mind, in the simulator than the newer ND, because they seem like you can control your own destiny a little bit better, and I think if you're good, you're going to show it here. It's not just a crapshoot to see who can come out on top of the draft battle.
And that really matches what we find in real life. A lot of the drivers that raced both cars are talking professional racing friends of mine, Kenton Cook, Patrick Gallagher, both super successful in these series. Robbie Foley, all those guys say that the newer cars draft a lot better, and it keeps people in the fight a lot longer, maybe than they should, than these older NC cars. So it's bottled accurately, and now we're seeing that big side-by-side battle. This is just outside the top 10, I think.
Yep.
Behind the leaders down under the Sargento Bridge. 31
of Jordan Bachmeyer in the pink and white car, and Justin Hall in the 64 just in front in 13th place. Fairly orderly up in the top 3 for now, as we do have a car alongside Paul Darling. That is Ryan Maloney going into turn number 6.
Wow, and things have really tightened up at the front. This is a 10-car battle for the top 10. All of them together for the most part. Darling still side by side through the inside of turn 7, and while Jonathan White also gets a good run up the inside of Chris Taylor. They're 2x2. Now Maloney shuts the door on front of Darling. Everybody goes back to single file. Quick note, stewards were reviewing the start. We're waiting on a word from whether or not there's going to be any action from that, but maybe some jumping.
I was just watching Nick Del Campo absolutely just wrestle that 15 car like it was a bucking bull through turn number 8. He just got into the braking zone. I think he caught the grass, and the hands just inside that car moving around so quickly to hang on to these. Again, I would assume all of these drivers have sim racing wheels at their desk or their sim rig. They're not necessarily on controllers, Tom, so that is real sawing action to keep the car in a straight line.
and that's the black and blue car of Del Campo. Remember, he went from 24th to 10th, now up to 7th in this race, so he's having a great night. Whoa, Zoo really deep down at the can of the corner. Oh, that was close. I think Del Campo dodged one there, as the field's now going to separate a little bit. Now maybe, is it top 7? Starting to break away.
Side by side for the 43 and 37. That door got slammed pretty quick. Luke Pfeiffer in the 06 tucked in behind. One of the drivers I wanted to keep an eye on was where the 30 car was, or 33 car rather, of Chris Henn. Here he is, 41st to 32nd. This is going to be a very long race for him, but probably a pretty fun one. You get to pass a lot of cars when you start out back like this.
Going well so far. No damage that we've seen on that car, as he's now going to work his way towards the top 30, hopefully for him.
Oh, Nathan Saxon. Where did Saxon? Oh, never mind. I think for a moment my timing messed up, and I thought the leader just crashed on the straightaway, but he's through turn number 1. And Brendan Hawken closing, and I'm so impressed with the 99 car here.
Well, this is a very different race from the race number 1, and when you're seeing the 99 actually push Saxon down the straightaways, they're really working together here at the front of this one, where last time we saw a lot more shuffling. When Darling was the leader, he got shuffled back quite a bit. Now Saxon, they look like they're pretty comfortable to have Saxon lead this one for the first handful of laps, and that's kind of comes back to our race note of first day of school. Everybody feeling each other out in race 1. They're settling in here in race 2.
In the background, Riley Thompson in the number 58 is rolling in 10th spot. I would have thought I'd see him climb up a little bit higher in the first race of the night, but here he is, started in 9th, running 10th right now. Hasn't really moved forward. The 37 up the inside, that's Logan Walker on Kevin Zhu. And now the 58, Thompson has to go through the grass to stay on course.
Ooh, and actually Walker doesn't let him back on. Thompson's going to stay in the grass a long time and get passed by one more driver in the 06. That's Pfeiffer. So he gets shuffled back a couple with that aggressive move.
And we've seen a lot of that. You see this great battle here. This is Gustavo Pergato, Justin Hall, Steve Ficacci going for it. See a lot of people kind of running each other wide and then not letting people back on the racetrack, and that's a little bit naughty. But we'll see how the stewards take care of that here. You got to leave each other enough racing room. However, there is a lot of circumstances where you'll run out to the edge of the racetrack and then someone will try to sneak up the outside when the curbing is running out. That's a no-no.
Yeah, the general rule with the track limits, especially a place like here where some of them are really usable, is you can use them, but you're not entitled to come back on however you please. So you got to be really careful with when you choose to use them. This battle, I mean, this is 12th on back, is basically the rest of the field still in this one.
Here's Greg Profeta in the number 29. He had Elijah Cloft right up the rear tailpipes. And here is Alex LaRose in 19th place. Remember, he got a penalty in the first race of the night here, Tom, but started 28th. He's up 9 spots.
Yeah, it was a penalty for avoidable contact with the 23 car, so that was unfortunate to see both of those drivers have incidents. And I'm seeing a number of other notes from the stewards, as this one is a little more frantic than the last one everywhere but at the front. I'm still keeping an eye on the leaders, and really it's the 99 pushing Nathan Saxon in the lead around the track at this point.
In the background, keeping an eye on some other drivers we saw have some issues in the first race. Zach Burke in the number 13 looped around, I believe, in turn number 5. So did Mitchell Peak. He had a couple incidents in the first race of the night. Murphy Nichols ended the first race with some crash damage. He started this race in 38th. He's gained 5 spots to 33rd, and nights like this are just a grind with a 40-car grid here, Tom. But like I said, you get to pass a lot of cars. It can be pretty fun. How about this scrap here behind 43 of Kevin Zhu? It's getting really racy here for 8th on back, but for the race lead, Tom, you were freaking out because there was a great battle going on here.
Well, yeah, this is the first lap. They finally didn't push each other down the front straightaway. Check this out. Hawken goes to the lead over Saxon, so Saxon is now back to 2nd. Darling made a move as well and moves up to 3rd. Maloney back to 4th, with White and Taylor still clinging onto this one. So they got 3 solid laps of working together. Now that they've broken away from the field, check out those gaps. They are now comfortable to battle, and it's actually a 7-car battle with Del Campo still clinging on as well, the 15 at the back.
Into turn number 5. Look at Saxon right on the tailpipes of the 99. He's getting real cheaty on the outside. Look at that. Look at who's way out there. Was that Nick Del Campo all the way to the fence in turn number 5? You mentioned in real life the rumble strips out there are too violent to use. Here in the sim, flat enough that you can get all over them. But there's going to be contact there. A little bit of door rubbing, trading paint.
When you have to wonder if it's okay to use when you're single file, but not okay to use if you gain position from it. From the race steward's perspective, we'll see if Del Campo actually gains position from it. He holds the outside of turn 7. That's a good move. And deep on the brakes down into turn 8. The 53 still holds it there, and they're battling for the wrong spot. Look at how much time they're losing to 5th. They're almost out of the draft at this point.
Oh, man, and you mentioned the race steward. Poor guy's probably looking through 50 different incidents right now. You could probably get away with some stuff at the moment without getting caught. Chris Taylor slides in front of Del Campo, but as you mentioned, they've lost a full second. They're going to touch. Taylor slides out the racetrack, slams into the concrete, turns up and over. And barrel rolling down the back straightaway, he will come to rest right in front of the field.
Oh, no.
And Kevin Zhu obliterates him. And Taylor comes to rest on all 4 tires.
A relatively harmless contact turns into a huge incident for multiple drivers there. As you can see, Del Campo trying around the outside, finally slots in behind for a moment, but really gets a good run from that outside lane into the back bumper, tries to do the over-under, and then it's just a quick overcorrection for the 53. Unfortunately, I don't think that contact was necessarily fair game. And
he tried to get off the track, Tom, but there's not a lot he could do.
And the brake lights were on. He was holding the brakes, and unfortunately physics wouldn't let him stop before Kevin Zhu and the rest collected him.
Well, back out front, we're going to be 4 laps to go this time through halfway through the second race of the night, the final race of the night, in fact. Alex LaRose, big slide behind him. That's the 11-car Brigado. It's popping off here, Tom. It's getting real elbows out for now. I mentioned LaRose, though, because his climb has been super impressive. 28th to 14th, 14 spots forward and climbing right now.
And that's why we called him out early in the night as a driver to watch. He's got that. I think is he a gray car or a white car? I can't tell in the shade now. He is a white car, so he's a new driver to the series, and we called him out as one to watch. Unfortunately, didn't get the great start to the season, but he's trying to recover it now. Looks to the inside, hucks back in line, and the 26 continues his climb as the car in front, the 29, shows the nose on the 64.
They're going to be 3 wide here, Tom, as they look at the exit of turn 2. No, LaRose thinks better of it, tucks in, moves to the left. 29 breaks across the racing line and squeezes between LaRose and Justin Hall. At the front, though, Brandon Hawken is back in behind Nathan Saxon and now pushing him down towards turn 5.
So they kind of ignited a little battle for one lap. Turned a little chaotic, but now they're back in flying order. Whoa, Jonathan White deep on the brakes up the inside of the 65. That is Maloney, who holds the outside and slots back in, but Saxon has worked his way back to the lead and has a bump draft partner again in Hawken.
Luke Pfeiffer run a little wide on the exit. Oh, I heard a motor expire. Alex LaRose. No, was it him? It is him. Oh, Alex. My heart breaks. Just downshifting too early here, Tom.
See deep on the brakes. Oh, and there it goes, the big pop.
RPMs drop to 0. The motor expires, and Alex LaRose is done for the day. Out front, though, far from over. 5-car breakaway all the way back to Jonathan White.
We are getting word for the incident we saw a lap ago at this part of the track. The 15 of Nick Del Campo is receiving a black flag from the race stewards for avoidable contact with the other car involved, the 53, I think,
yes,
of Chris Taylor. So that driver, who sits a lonely 6th, a valiant effort from 24th on the initial grid, but will not hold that 6th place with that black flag on this lap.
You'll have to wonder where he's going to drop 30-plus positions. Was it worth it to try to cut it that close there, Tom? That little mistake is going to cost him a whole lot of time now. At the front, though, coming to 3 laps to go, Brandon Hawken, brand new to this series and this car, runs in behind Nathan Saxon as they climb up the hill towards turn 14. 3 laps to go. Everyone's practicing just nailing this apex in turn 14. As you mentioned, it was one of our keys to the race. Getting it right is so important, but I don't think you can wait to the last corner. I think we saw that fail in race number 1. I think you'll see a bit more aggression maybe going into Canada corner this lap through, or this race through. Michael Doling, Ismael Basso, Murphy Nichols all battling for about 25th spot. This is getting racy.
Back at the front, the leaders are bump drafting again. They're not really picking any fights with anybody, so this thing is staying 5 cars deep for the lead. But right now, everybody's pretty content to have Nathan Saxon lead this one. Paul Darling is a quiet 3rd, almost into the dirt, though, as he's pushing pretty hard. And then it's Maloney and White all in the battle as well. So you have to wonder, 2 laps ago we saw the battle start and Hawken really picked the fight, but now he seems content again to run 2nd.
Here's Murphy Nichols in the 05 car. We talked about him earlier in the evening, the crash that he had in race number 1. 38th to 25th car in front of him sliding off the racetrack. That's Michael Doling back across the racetrack. Doesn't hit anything, but that was a scary moment, I'm sure, for everybody in that group. Well, he's pulling back on the racetrack. I'm hoping that he's not going to back into the racing line. Not really the greatest re-entry, but he'll get back rolling, hopefully. Saxon, Hawken, Darling, Maloney, and White, top 5, and they are completely safe amongst themselves. They're in their own little bubble. It's 8 seconds back to Luke Pfeiffer. And Paul Darling is in a much better spot than he was in race number 1. And I think there's a lot of calculating going on in his brain right now.
Yeah, I'm really keeping an eye on him because if you remember, he was shuffled back to about 6th and then 5th for a long time. Ended up 3rd again on the finish of race number 1, but he's cruising in 3rd now in that black and yellow 55 car. So now that he's gotten a number of laps under his belt, sitting there in 3rd, he might have figured out how to get closer to 2nd and maybe 1st by the end of this race. But you got 4 other cars around him that are going to try really hard to make that not happen.
This just happened a moment ago. Murphy Nichols in this 05. Ooh, crash. Oh, that's a big one into turn 5. That's a 74 car also collected, Christopher Namek. And this is a peculiar one, I'll say.
Well, we're seeing a lot more incidents typical of Road America with especially drivers that are not particularly experienced at this particular track, because you get these super, super long drafting zones and long braking zones. It really promotes kind of these wild moves as you see everybody jockeying around at 125 miles an hour, and then it can just ignite these big, these explosive wrecks.
Yeah.
That's kind of unique to Road America alone when you have these drafting classes.
As we come to 2 laps to go, Nathan Saxon is out front, Brandon Hawken, Paul Darling, Ryan Maloney, Jonathan White in the top 5. They're going to start jockeying for the front straightaway. Look at this battle at the exit of Canada corner. Elijah Clough, Mitchell Peak, Raven Hopkins, Jack Sanchez, George Fike, Carter Kundinger. This is a great battle here as we come up to turn 14. Oh, this is going to get really racy. Oh, there's a car sliding sideways. That's George Fike. He'll just loop it in 14 all on his own. Back across the racetrack he will go. And at the front, here comes Paul Darling up the inside.
Wow, I don't know how he did that, but he's all the way up to the first spot. Whoa, contact between him and Saxon. Saxon goes into the dirt. Maloney's through on the inside. Everybody tries to avoid. Jonathan White now in the grass. They're 3 wide to turn 3.
Oh, man, that was opportunity for Jonathan White. He's going to grab a spot or 3 maybe if he could just squeeze by the 65. Can't do it. Nathan Saxon goes from 1st to 5th in 2 corners, not the way he wanted to go. Hawken gets the lead, Darling to 2nd. That was a very sketchy corner there, Tom.
Well, and that's what happens with 2 laps to go. This is go time for everybody. They know what needs to happen to get to the front. They know when they need to be in front by. Darling is trying it now inside for turn 5.
On the brakes now, Tom, down the gears. Hawkins runs wide. Can he cross over the 55? Here he goes. Nicely done.
Going to try it, but it's not a lot of overlap. We've seen both outside and inside work in turn 6. Does Darling go deep on the brakes, or does he try to start to drop back in line? Looks like he's going to try to drop back in line. That is experience right there. He knows side-by-side is going to hurt him more than it helps him, and he gets back behind the 99. So now it's Hawken back at the front. The question is now, Saxon, he controlled race number 1 really well from both the lead and 2nd. He shuffled all the way back now to 5th, I think. 4th now. So he's got a much different challenge than he had in race number 1 in that gray and purple car.
Oh man, this is starting to become a revolving door at the front of the field here. Through the carousel for the penultimate time. Next time by will be our final lap of this race, the final lap of race number 1. Ismael Basso has had an issue, so he's going to jump to the top of the score and we'll pull that until it sorts itself out. Hawken, Darling, Maloney, Saxon, and White, your top 5. They all shuffled as they came through turn 1 last time around. And Darling is in a great spot. However, Ryan Maloney behind him, I don't think is going to be much of a friend once we hit that white flag lap.
No, look at Saxon's trying to get back up towards the front. Shows the nose on the inside of Paul Darling. Sorry, not Darling. That's Maloney. Does he make the move? Yes, deep on the brakes down to Canada corner. The purple car of Saxon up the inside of the white and black 65. They're going to go side by side for a couple more corners, and that's bad news. Do the top 2 start to break away?
Jonathan White, I think the impatience here is because he sees those front 2 getting away, so he wants to shove these guys forward, sort out this battle so that they can run all the way back to the checkers as one group. They're going to get split here, though, especially running side by side.
Well, luckily for them, they now have 2 long straightaways to bring it back together. The problem is Saxon and White. They haven't figured this thing out. They're still side by side. White actually gets a generous swerve out of the draft from the 65. That's a really interesting move. The 65 of Maloney chose to give the draft to the car that had tucked out of line, and now things have changed shape very much so as Darling got to run around the outside of turn number 1. Starting the final lap, does he hold it?
Side by side, Darling out, tires in the dirt just for a moment, but Hawkins stays tough on the inside lane. Now he'll have the preferred line for turn number 3 as well. This is going to be a roulette down to the very last corner here at Road America, much closer than it was in race number 1. Darling out a little bit wide of the exit of 3. Now the drag race down the backstretch. Who can push harder?
Speed versus distance, inside versus outside. Darling has a little bit better run. They each have a teammate coming for the push. Saxon's going to get a big bump draft on the back of Darling. There it is. They're going to go nose to tail even, door handle to door handle into the brakes for turn 5.
Darling's got a big run, but can he get the car slowed down? This is going to be the tricky part on the brakes. Hawkins in deep around the outside. He's going to run wide, though, and Darling will have the preferred line for turn 6. The 65 car stays tough on the outside of the 16. Still 2 by 2 at the front of the field.
Gentlemanly to let everybody back on track, too. Look at the outside move from the 99 Hawkin, trying so hard. Now gets the inside for turn 7. And they both still have their little partners behind, pushing along. Darling keeps a nose on there. Now they're going to have a big braking zone for turn 8. They knock doors.
Into turn number 8 on the brakes. Contact between them, trading paint. Darling goes the short way around. Hawkins going to get squeezed out there. Gets cleared, though. Darling to the top spot.
Decisive move to shut the door. Now they're all single file through the carousel, flat out on the final lap. And remember, you pretty much want to be leading coming onto the front straightaway, but there's one more great passing opportunity after the kink here.
Hawkins going to have a good run. Will he hold the punches, or is he going to go side by side through the kink? Here we go, Tom. Door to door through the kink, the fastest corner on the racetrack. Darling leaves him space. They're going to touch here.
Bold move. Darling far off into the wall. Gets a big slam from Hawkins, and unfortunately is out of this one. Still tumbling, but now it's a 4-car battle at the front. Saxon somehow is back in the battle. Look at him up the inside. No, shuts the door, does Hawkins.
Oh, could there be a penalty for the 99 for that contact? We won't know until the end of the race. Hawkins, Saxon, Maloney, White, 4 cars battling for the checkers here. Canada corner up to the penultimate turn one final time. Who's going to win this race? Will Hawkins get penalized?
And the race stewards have already said the incident is under review, but they're going to race like it is. It doesn't matter. Hawkins at the front, Saxon second. White showing the nose in the black and white car. He's the only one that's raced in this series before for a full season, but it looks like Hawkins is going to get this one.
Oh, behind him, a little bit of juking and jockeying. The White and Maloney car is going to drag race up the hill for the race win. Unofficially, Brandon Hawkins in the 99 will win. Saxon, White, and looks like Maloney will come home in 4th behind White. Luke Pfeiffer, look at this fight go all the way to the checkers. Pfeiffer, Walker, Jordan Bachmeyer in the number 31, then Fakachi, Burke, and Mitchell Peak the rest of your top 10. Here's Chris Henn up the hill with Jack Sanchez. This is a battle for 12th position as they come across the line. And give it to Chris Henn. Great recovery from a crash in race number 1. And looks like everyone else will come on through. Look at this battle all the way to the stripe, the 24 and 89. Max Bauman's going to get it. Bresci will come home unofficially in 22nd position. Now the question becomes, will Brandon Hawkins get to keep that win? And my question is going to be to you, Tom. Do you think he should keep it? I know that's a tough question, a tough situation to put you in. But let's go back and look at the incident that in question here. Got to go back a little bit farther. Let's watch this situation unfold and see what your opinions are on it.
It's tough to say from that perspective. Even my eyes are half glued to the replay, half glued to the race control text box. But I do think from that perspective, at least, that Hawkins did not keep the car completely glued to the inside of the track. If you watch right here, he really turns in pretty early, but the contact happens early. And look how much curb and track there is to his right, which he really has the responsibility to use when he has a car on his outside. I still have no word from race control, but I do think it would have been at least a fairer move if he had been, right up against the grass on the right side. That said, Paul Darling absolutely left him, that car width plus an inch and no more. But I do think he left him the fair amount of space to earn side by side through the entire kink. Here's a better look at it. Look, he gets a little overexerted, washes wide really early in the corner, and that's when the contact happens. So I think it was probably a little bit of overexertion, a little overexuberant from the 99 car. The question is whether the race stewards agree or decide that that's a little bit too tough of a call to make. I wouldn't want to be them.
I wouldn't want to be them either. I mean, I don't know. That's a tricky one. It's not super straightforward in my mind, but let's have a look at our unofficial race results here for race number 2. Brandon Hawkins, unofficially the race winner here. We'll update you when we know. Nathan Saxon comes home in 2nd, then White, Maloney, Pfeiffer, the rest of your top 5. Logan Walker, great run for him, new name here, 6th in the 37. Jordan Bachmeyer, Steve Fakachi, Zach Burke, and Mitchell Peak, the top 10 here, Tom.
Yeah, the other interesting point as we scroll away down out of the top 10, that would, if the race results were to be changed, Nathan Saxon would be given the win for both of the first rounds. That's a great start to the championship either way. But the rest of these drivers, Chris Henn, look at that, up from the back of the pack to 12th in that race.
Yeah, I want to see where he actually started this event. If we have a look at his official starting position, 41st to 12th. That's the biggest mover of the day. I got to give him my regards for that.
I would actually say Zach Burke, 40th to 9th in that last race. That's an incredible charge.
Pretty good climb up into the top 10. Paul Darling, unofficially, 29th in the 55 car. Not where he wanted to start his season, especially because he might have won that race. You don't know how things could have shuffled, but not the way he wanted to end the day. Riley Thompson, 40th place for him. Chris Taylor, in the 53 car, 39th. A lot of bad days for some of our front runners, Tom, and I would have thought it would have been a bit more straightforward than that. Brian Allen in the 88 car down in 41st position. So while we wait for the unofficial results to become official, have one last kind of overview of what we saw here today. It's the 2021 SPEC MX-5 SimRacing Challenge, a 5-month-long esports championship with drivers from all over the country competing in iRacing. The grand prize is to test a real SPEC MX-5 Challenge race car at Circuit of the Americas, courtesy of Level Up Racing School. Tom, do we have information on the results just yet?
Nothing yet. I'm still waiting, and unfortunately, we may have to wait until 2 weeks from now to actually tell you what the results are. Obviously, we'll publish those as well, but still looks like these guys are just as torn as I am, making a call on that final incident there.
Also, while we're talking about the season prizing, last year's winner and champion, Ken House-Seal, is taking advantage of Level Up Racing School's prize and will get his SCCA competition license in 2021. And you can use that competition license to compete and race in the SCCA. So talk about going from the sim to the real world.
And he's actually invested in a Mazda RX-8, which is a very similar car to these MX-5s we just watched, to prep for the track and take it there. So not only does he autocross his ND Miata, but he's got a track car in the wings ready to go, and that's really cool to see someone be able to utilize that prize and put it to practice.
We are not going to leave you until we know the official results of this race, unless, of course, it takes another 20 minutes or so, then we'll probably leave you. We won't leave you hanging, or at least we're going to try not to here, while the stewards debate and discuss. But let's just talk about the last couple laps of race 2 and why they were different from race number 1.
Well, I think what I was watching unfold is kind of that experience. You call it like youth and exuberance versus age and treachery. I think Paul Darling came into that race came into the event with a little bit of exuberance, learned his lesson on some of the moves that he made in the first one, and really picked his spots on those last 2 laps to work his way from third to the lead. And I think that the inexperience, I don't know how much experience Hawken has outside of this, but he was really trying everything he could to cling on to that lead, where Darling had started to methodically pick his way back towards that spot. So both drivers at the point of the incident were just really, really pushing everything that they had. They were giving it everything that they got, but up to the point of the incident, I really was impressed with how Darling was able to use his experience with these cars to be patient for a while when he needed to be, and then get aggressive in those last 2 laps to put himself in contention for the win.
So while we're still waiting on the results, the official results to come through, let's talk about the next race.
Actually, look at this. Penalty, car 99, incident responsibility, a 30-second penalty here at the end of the race, which will knock him down to about 23rd position. So
wow.
Indeed, Brandon Hawken, due to incident responsibility per the race stewards, will be penalized 30 seconds, giving Nathan Saxon the win in race number 2, and indeed the sweep of round 1 here.
Wow, those dramatic last couple moments. So again, to repeat what Tom said, the 99 of Brandon Hawken penalized for incident responsibility for causing the collision between himself and the 55 of Paul Darling, and will be penalized 30 seconds. And that will move the 16 car of Nathan Saxon to the top spot. He will officially win race number 2 of the night, as well as race number 1. In just a moment, we're going to talk to our race winner and a few others and kind of get them in here to chat about the race. Let's talk about Summit Point Motorsports Park. That's our second round in 2 weeks' time, Tom. A very different racetrack from Road America.
Well, super different. Yeah, I think Road America is really the unique track on this schedule. There's a couple other tracks that have long straightaways and big drafting. I'm looking at, Mid-Ohio's got 1 straightaway. Sebring has a couple. Road Atlanta, Watkins, Glen. But Summit Point has that one big obvious drafting zone, and then a really technical handling section basically for the rest of the track. So I think the drivers are really going to have to adjust their expectations of what they came into for tonight. It's also a much narrower track. It's a much bumpier track, a more club-style track. And I think also it's going to highlight different drivers' strengths, because Road America is a different animal entirely than Summit Point.
Absolutely, and I think when we leave Summit Point and we head to our third round of the season, that will be at Sonoma Raceway. We're actually running the short layout of Sonoma this time, which is the older NASCAR course with the kind of the shortcut. We don't actually run the carousel. That's going to race a lot differently than the Sonoma we've raced in the past. That's a much more technical racetrack for the entirety of the course. You won't be drafting much at all there, so that'll be something entirely different than Mid-Ohio, Sebring, Road Atlanta, Watkins, Glen, Laguna, Seca, and Circuit of the Americas to finish off the season. We've got Nathan Saxon here tonight with us, joining us now in the booth, officially the winner of both races tonight after the penalty for Brandon Hawken. Nathan, congratulations. A great start to the season. Take us through your night.
Well, that was one of the craziest 2 races I've ever been a part of, but I set out going in just to stay in the top 2 positions because I've never been aggressive enough in this series, and it seemed to work out. It was hard to try and get them to battle in race 1, and then race 2 got shoved wide by Paul there going into 1 and had to fight back, but I mean, he came out worse of it anyway, but yeah, very happy.
Well, you mentioned the aggression and getting the elbows out perhaps here a little bit. When we head to Summit Point in a couple weeks, you're going to have to get those elbows out even more on a tighter, twistier racetrack. What do you think you learned about tonight? We saw a lot of drivers with the white base liveries, specifically Brandon Hawken and that of Ryan Maloney battling in the top 5, top 6. Do you think it's going to be experience that wins you a championship this year, or do you think it's going to be someone new that you're going to have to be chasing down all year?
I think as the season goes on, it's going to be really close. Brandon and Ryan are both really quick. I think these 2 races experience is what won me them, having done 2 seasons of this already. It was kind of knowing how much these cars draft. I mean, they're a little different now, but just knowing when to go, because before I was way too cautious, and I think the aggression helped out here.
Nathan, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on winning both of the first 2 races. We'll see you in Summit Point in a couple weeks. We'll see if you can defend your opening 2 rounds, your undefeated record in 2021. Thanks for talking.
Thanks, guys, looking forward to it.
Thanks, Nathan. We're going to move on now to Paul Darling, who was about a half a lap away from potentially winning a race here in the closing moments of the first round of the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. Paul, obviously a spectacular way to go out in race number 2, that's for sure, but race 1 still had a pretty good result there. Take us through your night as a whole, and then how you're going to bounce back from this deep hole in the points for next week.
I was surprised qualifying pole, but that's the nature of this track. You get in a good lap, and there's not many laps you don't get many chances in qualifying, and then I feel like I threw it away by not being aggressive enough, but that's kind of a problem I've always had my entire career. And then in that last race, that was just really close racing, and it is millimeters, especially in the kink like that. And I think race control made their decision. I left room, and he didn't by a couple mils. And I hope that crash did look spectacular, though. So.
Yeah, it was definitely photogenic. Obviously, I think we like to see cars with all 4 tires on the ground. But Paul, obviously not a great way to end race number 2, but a strong race 1. We want to wish you the best of luck in race number 2. And you almost won the championship last season, so consistency is key. And while tonight wasn't necessarily an example of that, I think you'll be getting right back on the horse next week. So good luck to you.
Yep. See you guys next time. Thanks.
See ya. Thanks. We got Jonathan White joining us here as well, another return driver from seasons past. Jonathan, second place in race number 2 and a pretty good scrap in race 1 as well. Take us through your night. It was pretty aggressive and physical out there, especially at the tail end of the second race.
Yeah, it was one heck of a race, Kyle. I think for the most part I was kind of off pace. I think my pace was all right, but it seemed like towards the second half of the track I seemed to struggle, especially at the carousel, so it made it difficult to make some passes. But even in the first part of the track, or the first half, it was still really difficult to pass because everyone was really on each other's bumpers. And yeah, especially towards the end of race 2, I was really struggling to get around, doing everything I could. And luckily, it seemed like there was a bit of a scuffle up ahead, so I used that to my advantage to make my way up to third. But it was no easy thing to do.
Well, we've heard a lot of people mention the word aggressive, or getting elbows out, getting physical. We've seen a little bit at here at Road America, but I don't think getting physical is necessarily the safest way to get to a championship with the chances for penalties. So how do you balance risk versus reward when leaning on competitors or going for a gap that might not be there?
I think sometimes you gotta just take a chance. I mean, usually I deduce if it's possible to pass. I mean, if it's not, it's going to easily result in a crash. I back off. I especially did that in race 1, where towards the beginning, both Nathan and Paul were getting side by side, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to play it safe and, back off a bit. But that ended up costing me about 4 positions and dropped me back down to 6 for that race. So that definitely wasn't really the right way of racing this time around. But you definitely want to be aggressive, definitely take chances. But of course, you want to respect your fellow drivers and not just end them with a dive bomb. But sometimes it does come to that.
Jonathan, it was a really strong, consistent night for you. Good luck to you in 2 weeks at Summit Point Raceway. We'll see you out there, and best of luck to you again.
Thanks, Kyle. See you then.
See you then. All right, Tom, as I was mentioning to Jonathan, we heard a lot of drivers talk about aggression. We saw plenty of that tonight, but next time out, Summit Point, a lot tighter, twistier, penalties flying in race number 2 specifically. With the steward in here, you got to be careful. You got to watch where you're putting your race car. I think a lot of people learned the hard way tonight that you can't get physical in the series.
Certainly, I think we learned tonight there's a race win mentality and there's a championship win mentality. And a lot of the drivers I saw at the front really having that championship mentality of you can win the championship if you have a 6th place on your record, but it's going to be that much harder if you have that 29th place on your record. So as we continue this championship, 16 rounds left, that championship mentality is going to win over in the end.
We'll see you in 2 weeks' time at 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here on Winding Road for the second round of the 2021 SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge from Summit Point Raceway. My name is Kyle Heyer with Tom O'Gorman. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time and being with us here on this amazing Wednesday night for some sim racing action. At the end of the year, we'll crown one driver champion. We want to extend a huge thank you to our sponsors, Level Up Racing School, Penguin RC Simulation, Winding Road Racing, and Sportscar Driving Association. Founded in 1995, the Sportscar Driving Association provides the driving enthusiasts the opportunity to experience high-performance driving in a safe and controlled environment. SCDA welcomes everyone from novices with no track experience as well as seasoned drivers and racers. You can visit them at www.scda1.com to learn more about them and their events at some of the best tracks on the East Coast. We'll be at one of those East Coast tracks in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on Winding Road.